ultimately training comes down to this. Training should be goal specific and not gender specific. So you train for what you want to achieve, not for who you are. Here we are on a day of the week that I'm not quite sure about right now, looking at bits and bobs on the interwebs. What's going today? We're actually going to do another YouTube Shorts video. So these all seem to be quite accepted by you guys and you seem to really enjoy them and encourage them. We might as well make the most of it by doing more of them, because again, if it's content you want to see, then I want to create it. A couple of things down below in the description. We've got the TFNL Growth Guide linked down below, which is a workout program I've put together, in addition to the TFNL Community Coaching, which is essentially a progressive workout program I write for you. So essentially what it is you sign up to a week free trial. After that, if you wish to continue, it costs less than your Netflix subscription per month. I just continuously write you a program as a community. You follow it on your own or follow it together as a group, make gains, progress, and when it gets to the end of the program, you tell me what you want to be done differently, you vote for it, and then I'll write a new program based on what you guys want. So it could be more glute emphasis, it could be more back emphasis, so many different things, and this is for home workouts and gym workouts as well. There are 2 options. But now, like I said, we're going to crack on very quickly with the short. 4 glute exercises you haven't done yet. To clarify, if there is an exercise you probably haven't done yet, or an exercise that is kind of deemed to be like new, wild and crazy, then it probably, in a lot of cases, probably doesn't need to be done, because no one's really discovering anything new and incredible and amazing that's never been discovered before. A lot of what we know works has kind of already been discovered, and there's nothing unreal coming to the table at the moment. Again, this is a variation of sissy squats where you're essentially using the bar to prevent you from shifting back. In all honesty, a ideal sissy squat to me is one that encourages mass amounts of knee flexion, which really lengthens the quads. I think, although yes, to an extent, because we're going to this 90-degree point, it could be okay for the glutes. It's probably not a movement I would prefer over other squat variations for the glutes. So I probably prefer a regular squat. I'd probably prefer like a split squat, something where you could load more effectively and more consistently. Lunge, step forward, step back, swap leg, lunge, step forward, step back. So it's almost like a 4-piece lunge variation combination. I'm not sure I fully support it, just because it's maintaining that tension for a significant period of time, which is obviously going to give the feeling of mass amounts of burning and therefore the potential illusion of mass amounts of working, but that doesn't mean it's doing what you want it to do. Again, I think a standard lunge or a standard split squat will probably be just as, maybe even actually arguably more effective. So it's like a kind of bent over kickback variation. The glutes aren't really going through a mass range of motion here. They're doing that kind of slight curtsy lunge variation there, but this kickback at the end, it's not really taking them through a range of motion against sufficient resistance, because the leg is just on its own there, again due to that limited ability to really push mechanical tension and progressive overload, which it does actually contribute to limiting how effective that movement will be for the intended musculature. Again, it's a good morning squat hybrid. I don't really think this is all that great. This is something I would actually include as part of my lower body dynamic warm-up. Personally, it's not something I would choose to include as part of like a working exercise, because again, I think there are better alternatives, and we know the glutes are fully lengthened once we kind of get to about the 90-degree mark or so. So going any lower than that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get more glute. If anything, it's actually going to shift a bit more emphasis onto like the quads, for example. The good morning is a good movement. The squat is a good movement. Both of which are good movements for the glutes. They don't need to be combined. Single movements are typically going to be more effective for building muscle than combo movements, and I feel like this is very much targeted at building the glutes. So you'll notice some have audio, some don't have audio. It's mainly because of copyright, because YouTube, like I said, they don't like me when I put music and fun stuff in my videos because they tell me it's naughty, and it upsets me. Hello Max, we're looking at how to train the abs.
Alright, quick tip, if you want to grow your abs, stop doing all these fancy exercises that keep your back in a flat position. Even though you might feel a burn, oftentimes it's just your hip flexors, as doing this results in nothing more than an isometric contraction for your abs.
This sounds like me in every ab video analysis I do. I always kind of push. A lot of these movements are going to be really hip flexor dominant. Unless you're reducing the distance between the sternum and the pelvis, or the pelvis and the sternum, which again comes into that lumbar flexion he was talking about, you're not going to be training the abs as effectively as you think you are, because they need to go through a sufficient range of motion, which then again goes into what he was saying about lengthening and then shortening. That's kind of what we see as a sufficient range of motion, depending on the extent to which you are lengthening and shortening the muscles.
So either bring your pelvis up to your sternum like during a leg raise, where you are lifting your glutes off the floor to actually flex your spine, or bring your sternum down to your pelvis like
Rope crunch, fantastic variation. I'm a massive fan of the rope crunch. You'll notice a big thing there. As he comes down, he's really bending that back, but his hips aren't shooting back. That's good. A lot of people, when they do this, they bend that back, fine, but then the hips start shooting back and the bum leaves the screen. It's not what we want. Again, that's actually not going to help reduce the distance and kind of go through that adequate range of motion we look for. Bloody good video. Good stuff from Max. I've not seen this created before, but first impressions looking good. Fitness KayKay is someone who has come up on the list many times and somebody who is actually quite heavily requested in the comment sections. So if you want me to look at her, I will certainly look at her. In fact, I'm actually going to look at her in the next few weeks because I think she's been requested so much I really need to bump her up the list. Know and feel the difference between the deadlift and the RDL. The deadlift, to use your full range of motion, pay attention to hinge both the knees and the hips. You're getting some more knee bend in there, I respect it. Remaining deadlift, the entire range of motion relies on hinging around the hips only. Yeah, they're very valid. Very valid. So essentially, the only thing you can really alter in the RDL, being the remaining deadlift, is the degree of knee flexion. So obviously, the more bent your knees are, the further you can push your hips back, therefore lengthening the glutes further, making it more favorable for the glutes. The straighter your legs are, the more hamstrings are going to get involved. But yeah, as a whole, the range of motion of this movement comes from the hips because it's a hip hinge movement. Whitney Simmons. So actually, funnily enough, I'm actually looking at Whitney either in the next video or the video before this, whenever this video comes out. So mic up, back, and biceps. What's occurring?
So you're probably thinking I'm doing RDL. No, because it's upper body day. 7, 8.
Barbell bent over rows. Again, it's not personally one of my favorite movements if I were to be looking at optimizing hypertrophy, but if I'm not looking at optimizing hypertrophy, I think it's a bloody good movement. The limiting factor that often presents itself with the barbell bent over row is usually the lower back. The lower back can fatigue quite quickly. If you're looking at purely choosing the best movements in the world for hypertrophy, it probably wouldn't include it. But if you're training for any other goal beyond that, so just fitness, enjoyment, even hypertrophy with the idea of a resensitization phase where you choose less optimal movements to give you a break from optimal movements to then be able to go back to those optimal movements to then milk them for all their worth later on to prevent yourself from becoming stale, then yeah, you can throw them in then. I actually probably would throw them in then. Also, when I say optimal movements, I don't believe there's any optimal movement. I think just some movements could potentially be better than others depending on the goal. I'm merely using the term optimal movements. It's just a simple and easy means to kind of gauge and understand what I'm trying to say. The bent over row is also going to be absolutely cracking if you're looking at like sport specific training, if you're looking at just general fitness, like I said earlier. So many reasons to include it, and it is a good movement. It just depends why you want to include it. So the incline dumbbell curl, as we're doing here, you'll see it's a good movement. It's actually one of my favorite movements. So this kind of works the biceps in their more lengthened position, which you don't really need to do. With these though, you don't need to lean back that far because it puts your shoulders in quite an unfavorable position. I'd actually probably bump the bench up one notch, and all you want is that elbow just be slightly behind you. You don't need to be too far back. So what we do is almost like an alternating bent over dumbbell row. Again, the lower back is probably going to fatigue faster than your lats will. So therefore, is it the best variation in the world? I don't think there is one best variation. I'm sure it's certainly a good one, but for this, I would probably typically favor a chest supported variation instead. So with these lat kind of pullovers, lat pushdowns, whatever you want to call them, this overhand grip encourages you to flare your elbows slightly. It would probably actually be better for the lats if we could adopt a neutral grip using like maybe D handles at the end of this bar, or maybe a rope. That would actually encourage you to keep your elbows and your upper arm closer to the body, thus working the lats a bit more effectively. Because one of the things they love to do is keep your arm close to the body. Rope face pulls, fantastic movement as well. Again, not so much for hypertrophy, but for shoulder health and injury prevention, I would say I'm a big fan of the face pulls. Of course, when you look at like the rear delts, for example, they want to come across or they want to come slightly down. The face pull kind of puts you the other way by pulling you up. Not great for the rear delts, but it is going to be pretty good for the external rotation of the shoulders, which is something commonly neglected. And we've got a hammer curl. You can do it like this if you want to. I would just typically turn around and do it standing and just standard, as you probably saw in my video last week when I was in the gym. Yeah, but I think it's good that Whitney's actually encouraging people to train the upper body, because again, a lot of people do neglect training certain areas of their body because they maybe don't enjoy it. But I do think for a lot of people, it can be quite important to train your body as a whole and in a balanced manner. Oh, Leana Deeb, what are we looking at? Try this full body workout. Let's have a gander. So a bit of mobility beforehand. I'd love to see that. Probably going through ranges of motion she intends to go through later on. What are we starting with? So we're starting with chin-ups. Solid, good range of motion. Squats, banging range of motion as well. Look at that depth. Fantastic. Dumbbell bent over rows. Again, it's a combo movement, so I'm not a massive fan of it. But again, it depends on your goals. Like I said, if this was purely for hypertrophy, I'd probably say no. But I know Leanna's goals are not purely body hypertrophy focused, although that is just an element of them. She's looking for a bit more of like an overall goal, I believe, where she's getting fitter, she's getting stronger, she's getting bigger, based on what I've seen anyway. So in which case I would actually align with it. I say, yeah, absolutely. Push-ups into like a mountain climb variation. Again, I think this probably aligns with her goals. The push-ups are bloody hard, and the push-ups are a good movement for the chest. A split squat variation for health and safety reasons. I'm not going to comment on split squats any further due to the likelihood of promoting trauma and flashbacks. For me personally, I'd say probably not enough hamstrings. The only kind of hamstrings we really got was that kind of bent over row RDL combo. I think I'd probably want a bit more, which is why I probably favor just doing one or the other, because combining those two movements together risks you neglecting one of the muscle groups you're trying to work. That's just me personally. That's just my preference. I think at the end of the day, she's doing what she wants to do. It's working for her. If it aligns with her goals, I fully respect and fully support it, because not everybody wants to go to the gym purely to build muscle. Some people want to go for fun. Some people want to go for their mental health. Some people want to get fitter. Some people want to get stronger. Some people do want to build muscle. Some people want to do a combination of all of those things. Some people want to work out for their sport, whatever it may be. If whatever you're doing aligns with your goals, I back it. There's not a single one way to achieve something. Most movements have a time and a place. Some movements might simply be better for some goals more than others. That is the video. So quickly, we're going to crack on with comment question of the week. I've got a question concerning the difference between men and women in the gym, because there are a lot of claims out there, and I'd really like to hear your opinions / experiences with female lifters. Basically, this question is asking about my thoughts and opinions surrounding that women not being able to handle the same like volume and intensity as men, etc., etc. Ultimately, training comes down to this. Training should be goal specific and not gender specific. So you train for what you want to achieve, not for who you are. When it comes to what men and women can achieve, there have been theorized to be some differences. And actually, one of those differences goes the other way, in which case people have actually suggested, because estrogen is a primary driving hormone of recovery, some people have actually suggested that women are better at handling volume than men are, which I found really interesting. Is there research to support this? I'm unsure. It's just simply stating that I have heard this before. And when it comes to progressing, again, I think progress is very much dependent. Men typically have a lot more testosterone than women, which is quite a driving hormone for muscle building, hence why PEDs, so anabolic steroids, oftentimes are derivatives of testosterone. When it comes to taking advice from men, not women, I think ultimately you take advice from somebody, regardless of gender, that is giving good advice. I think just because somebody is a man, just because somebody is a woman, does not influence or dictate the advice they're able to give. Their knowledge and experiences will dictate that, not their gender. I wouldn't stress too much about it. Just know that you'll progress as fast as you can progress. You can only do your best. That is it. That is the video. Thank you for tolerating me. Thank you for tolerating my lack of headwear, which I'll explain either in the next video or the video before this. And thank you for tolerating the video.